Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Yoga podcast. I'm very excited to have Savitha Enner on the show today, and we're talking about a lazy yoga teacher's guide to living yogic wisdom. Now, before I get into today's episode, I must warn you that my upstairs guest bathroom is being demoed. And it's right above my home office where I record this podcast. So I apologize in advance if you hear drilling, banging, clunking, and any other background noise. It was inevitable. We've got a bunch of work going on. And I tried to move this podcast around, but there was going to be some noise of some form. I do not think it has filtered through, but fingers crossed, if you hear something, I apologize. It's one of those things I couldn't help. Okay. On the show today, Savitha is talking to us about her approach and what she likes to call a lazy person's approach to living yogic wisdom. And we get into the layers of it. Savitha Enner is somebody I discovered on Instagram, and she is a fellow yoga teacher. In fact, we both are from Karnataka in the southern part of India, and we grew up geographically very close, okay, in terms of the places we were born and raised. She's learned yoga culturally, but she's also done a lot of yoga schooling when she moved to the US. She's been here for a very long time. And today she teaches her own asana classes. She's part of teacher training faculties. She also indulges in gardening and cooking. And that's how I discovered her. She breaks down her approach. What she calls the lazy person's approach, the lazy yoga teacher's approach to living yoga, which I find very refreshing. We talk about so many different aspects of how to simplify and take the burden off of us as yoga teachers, as yoga practitioners, and how to really get good at just connecting with what we need and understanding the inner journey. So I really hope you will find Savitha's experience and insight helpful. There are so many notes she hits about Ahimsa and Astheya and what it truly means in practice. We talk about the ego. There's so much in there. I don't want to give too much away in this intro. I have linked to Savitha's bio, her website, and everything else at our show notes at letstalk.yoga. Next week, I will be talking about the Pranayama Immersive Study Program. The dates will be out. And I also have a new course I'm working on. I'm not going to be talking about that, but just putting it out there. It's something that you have been asking for so long. It's work in progress. I need to really work on it, verify it, see if it's valuable for you, but something that I'll be getting into later. Okay. As always, if you find value in the Let's Talk Yoga podcast, please remember to rate and review this on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to our YouTube channel called Aham Yoga, and leave a rating on Spotify. This is a free resource for you, but it takes time, effort, money for us to create and put this out there. And the only way we know that this content is actually resonating is when you engage with it in this capacity. Thank you so much. I will see you on the other side. Hi, Savitha. Welcome to the Let's Talk Yoga podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited that you are here. And I really like this topic, Lazy Teacher's Guide, because sometimes I feel like there is so much we try to do, right? As students, we want to do the asana, the pranayama, the kriyas. We want to understand philosophy. We want to do it all. And we still have a full life. At least most people do, right? Yeah. We have jobs and children and pets and other responsibilities. So I'm intrigued by your approach. Because if there is a more relaxed, slow, laid back, but effective way of doing this, I would love to know, because we can't rush through yoga, right? No. Even though we try. So what made you approach it this way? What is this lazy teacher's approach? I'm not saying you're lazy. I just want to make that very clear.
I'm a self-proclaimed lazy, so you don't have to call me that. I already am, and I've admitted it to myself.
So what pushed you to think of it this way?
That's the first step, what you just asked. Like, I have admitted to myself that I'm a lazy person. Like, other people have a hard time admitting to themselves that they're lazy people, maybe, because I have admitted to myself that I am not a very I'm not a type A, like nothing has to be perfect. Almost good is always good for me in everything. Like, almost good is always good for me. I don't strive for everything to be perfect. And when things do happen in a perfect way, it surprises me as much as it surprises everybody else. And that's a lot of joy. Like, whenever, I mean, I don't know, like a flower, right? It's blooming and you see it bloom, and then it was actually had a bug on it when I started blooming, and it was kind of when it started blooming, I was like, I probably need to spray it. Da, 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 da. I didn't do anything to it. I just kind of let's see what happens. It's just not the only flower it's going to bloom on that plant. There'll be many more to come. Let me just see what happens. And it did. The bug just fell off, and because of the rain, and it bloomed into a beautiful flower. It is as surprising to me as probably for the plant, whatever, right? So that's kind of how I take things, in the sense we have to first kind of understand what our intrinsic nature is. Some people like it to, more organized. And like, that's my husband. He likes it, everything organized. We have never paid a single, like a late fee on anything in our lives. Like, we don't have parking tickets, none of those things, right? Because he's like very, very diligent about that. I am not that person. And I do not aspire to be that person either. And that is the first thing which, like, that is through yoga. I understood that I didn't have to be, that is admirable quality, but also an admirable quality is to be able to just be and see where it goes to. It's an admirable quality about that too. So once I made peace with that I didn't have to be that organized type A person, then I had to find my own way of understanding how I want to include yoga or inspired by yoga. And also I almost feel like they're going tandem, in the sense like you cannot talk about yoga and life separately. They're kind of like always going together. So I really never, ever think them as two separate things. They're kind of the same thing for me. So my lazy approach to that was basically admitting to myself that I was lazy. Second, what is that thing which doesn't make me lazy? What are the things? I cook 18 hours a day when I have my events. I'm not lazy that time. When I'm doing teacher training, I teach 8 hours, like straight up. I'm not lazy at that time. Right? So then I had to recognize I'm not lazy overall, but I'm lazy to the things which I don't like doing. Right? Those kind of admittance is something which you have to be honest with yourself, and then it becomes easier to take the next step. Okay. Does it make sense?
It makes sense.
Okay.
And to me, I'm in my head, I'm thinking, you really know yourself, right? You know what works for you. You know what doesn't work for you. You have a lot of clarity about who you are and what your approach is to yoga. Were you always like this? Were there any practices or filters? How did you hold yourself accountable, and how did you get from where you were to this more peaceful approach? I know we're calling it lazy, but it's very peaceful when I hear.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's unrushed. I have been on that other side of like, do this, do that, do this, teach 12 hours a day, and putting this unnecessary expectation on myself, only to realize that it's not sustainable.
Yes.
So what caused that switch?
Okay. That's a good question. And that's probably where it all began for me. To understanding what you use the word, like what I call lazy and what you call peaceful, is actually where it began. The day I realized that I'm not a very peaceful person. Like, I'm a self-proclaimed people pleaser. So when you are a people pleaser, you do a million things to please everybody. Like, the best example I can give you is you can walk into a party and there are 10 people, and then you would, like a people pleaser's activity, like, the brain works this way. They would want to find, what should I say so that I appeal to these two people? How should I act to appeal to these people? What should be my next what should I wear to appeal to these people? So somehow, collectively, with my actions, mind, words, I can appeal to all these 10 people. That never happens. It's a myth, right? That is never going to happen. And then if you've lived your life for a very long time trying to please everybody, At some point, I started realizing that that's impossible. And that clarity came actually through the practice of yoga, like in the sense, just asana. When I started doing my asana practice, you begin to see like your expectations of this is how the class is going to be, this is how I am going to do. And all that mostly falls apart because none of that becomes true once you step into the mat. It will be what it will be for most part. And then I took on the seat as an observer as to what's happening to me while I'm practicing yoga. And then I realized that I know it sounds so stupid, but let me just say it. I almost wanted to appeal to the gods of yoga so that they can be happy with me.
Mm.
Like the way you're pleasing people in a party, you're trying to appeal to the, pleasing the gods of yoga, if at all that's a word, right? And you begin to notice that there is it doesn't exist. That thing doesn't exist. And then slowly I began to realize, what if I don't try to do that? What if I don't try to do that? And that came because I realized how not peaceful I was within myself. And then when I started reading, that was asana, but then when I started reading philosophy, that actually took me to a natural route of like becoming more curious about philosophy and yogic text. And then I came about what was nonviolence, ahimsa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I didn't even read text. I didn't have a teacher back then. This was a long time ago. And I didn't have a teacher. I had I think all of us read like Swami Satchidananda's, copy of sutras when we do teacher training. So there was that. And even before that, I think whenever I typed up and Googled usually that's the picture on the image came up, or it was Gandhi, his philosophy of nonviolence. Those are the two which were kind of prominent when I started researching about it. None of them made a lot of sense to me at all. So then I decided I'm going to just kind of observe what is that I need to do to become peaceful within myself. And for me, that is ahimsa. It is not about whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian or sustainable and harming the earth. That is such a superficial way of looking at things. Right? I wanted to truly understand if there is this yoga is supposed to, let's say this yoga is supposed to free me, and that at least is the claim there. And I'm if that is the thing I'm looking for, then what is that? And it really began with understanding what truly ahimsa is. And then I understand sustainable amount of peace within my mind is what ahimsa is. To be able to, I'll have peaceful moments. I go to a class, take 3 deep breaths, I'm peaceful for the next 3 breaths. I go do a very super slow class, I'm peaceful for the 1 hour, or maybe even 30 minutes after the class. But then it's not sustainable. It's just very I know, I don't even know. You can cut this out if you don't want to put it out there. I always tell my students, if that is what you're looking for, that moment of peace in my class, you could have a glass of wine and you will get that too. Instantly, your mind blurs using any kind of chemicals, it does that too. But I wanted to find out without that, sustainable, I don't have to do something to be peaceful. I just wanted to be peaceful. And that is a very slow process of truly understanding who you are. And a lot of times, and then this is a practical thing, and I can attest to it. It had worked for me, and hope anybody's listening and want to try this out, they can. And then I gave myself an assignment for the next 5 years. I'm going to work on my peace of mind. I know it sounds so stupid. It's as if I have a goal, but it worked for me. I told myself for the next 5 years, I'm going to work on ahimsa. I'm going to truly understand what ahimsa is for myself. Nothing to do with anybody else, nothing to do with saving environment, animals, food, none of that. Just having a deep sense of peace within me. I'm going to give it 5 years. If it doesn't work, then I will find something else. But for the next 5 years, I'm going to work on peace of mind. So that's how it started. And my observation became that everything else had to take a backseat. So I was not going to be the most popular person in the room.
Yeah.
I was not going to win any arguments because that already is conflict, right? If I want peace, how can it come from conflict? I'm already if I want to win an argument with my teenage son, right? like that defeats the purpose, because I wanted to have the sustained amount of peace of mind. So then like every time I would, I mean, this is when like my kids are like, like 18 and 14 now, but when they're 8, 9, they're trying to push you, like teenage years, they're trying to constantly push you because that's their job. I mean, that's the nature. Like that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to push me. And I would be like, you win, I lose. Every time we had a fight, which didn't matter to me, every time I said that to him, you win, I lose. And it's completely fine with me. And so there were very few things left to me, which I really wanted to win. Very, very few things where I wanted to put down my foot and say, this, the rest of it could take a backseat. I didn't have to be smart. And this is one of the other things I usually tell people, that when you're looking for peace of mind, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. You're not going to be the most articulate person in the room. You're not going to be the most pleasing person in the room. You're not going to be the most loved person in the room, but you can attempt to be the most peaceful person in the room. That's within you. And that has to be the main thing for a very, very long time. And that's why the Satudirga Kala is like, if I ever get like a courage to tattoo, that would be my tattoo. Satudirga Kala Nairantarya Satkara Sevita Bhumihi. Like that's my favorite. So that actually, that's the only sutra I practiced for that entire 5 years. That's I didn't have to know anything else.
There is so much there. And I know you say it was a stupid thing. I think it's a brilliant thing to take something for 5 years because like you, I talk to yoga teachers all the time, and we're all rushing and nobody knows what they're rushing towards. Right. And to just take this, and I think goals are great in yoga. I am more type A personality. So I
it's
think
natural for you.
Yeah, goals, lists, structure, deadlines. I work very well like that. And so to have that thing of, I will just practice being more at peace with myself. Right? There's so much himsa, even identifying the amount of himsa there is and wanting to go to that state of ahimsa. Right. And it's not easy, especially in the role of being a parent and engaging with 2 young boys. So I think just that idea of 5 years, I'm just going to practice it. And to have that ekagra, that mind, that set, right? Like, this is my state of mind. I'm only going to practice this and really live that sutra of long time established foundation and strengthen that. To me, that's very, is brilliant. And I think it will help all of us listen to it and be like, wow, 5 years to build that peace.
That's why I called it a lazy. That's why I said it's lazy, because like everything else is like, you just kind of
secondary.
take it easy with the rest of the things. It's fine. Like things are missing out on you. Because when you are working on one thing, it's very easy to let go of the other things, because consciously, within yourself that, I mean, I know it sounds, again, like I don't want to make it sound trivial or easy, but then when you're raising a child also, it's the same thing. Like there is not a lot of things you can disturb and divert it. Like, you have to be there. Like for that long period of time. That is all you will be doing for a very long period of time. So I have an experience. I know what it takes to just like, if all you do when a child is born is feed and change diapers, and that's all you're doing. That's like Satadirga Kala, man. Like that is, like, that's it. Like there's nothing else. Like, if you don't change the diaper properly, you're just going to have shitty clothes, right? So you have to pay attention to changing diapers, and you have to do it every day, and you have to kind of do it. And that is like, that's how I always think it as. You got to do it. So like everything takes time. So just let it take as long as it takes.
But there is also this letting go in many ways of asmita, raga, dvesha, right? Those come in, your ego comes in. And to really be like, understanding what is healthy ego versus what is not. And I think as yoga teachers, I will only speak for yoga teachers at this point, we're stuck in that rat race of X, Y, and Z is us being successful in yoga.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We have those external lists, which really mean nothing if the internal list is not recognized. Right? And I'm saying list because that's how I think. But it is how has your ego evolved?
Mm. So I don't think ego is a bad thing.
And
Like, I
neither do
think
I. I honestly don't think
exactly
so either.
ego
Yeah.
for me, but then I have understood that ego is a functional thing.
Mm-hmm.
So ego is something, it's not a very good instrument to understand who you are, but it's a great functional thing. It will help you to be effective in any environment. Like,
It'll
the
help you
identity
survive.
of, yeah, exactly. The identity of being a mother helps you to be intuitive about your children's needs.
Mm.
An identity ego is basically like the persona, like we have, taken on, right? Like, that's what I mean by ego, like the identities we take, akara we take, or the identities we take, right? That's what I mean by, ego. Like, there is a reason why that is there. So it's highly functional. And then if you can begin to see it as a functioning thing, it's an amazing thing.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
then when it becomes like, that is all my identity is,
Mm.
that is what it becomes determined, like, deterring. When it comes to like ego in the way, like English word ego and not the Sanskrit word, ahankara, but then the English word ego, I think when you prioritize, again, I'll come back to the same thing because, like, as I said, I am very like, I keep it super simple because I want it to be peaceful. The ego has to take a back seat. The priority is being peaceful. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
The priority is every time the ego came in, like, again, as I said, this is like an exercise, right? The first couple of times, it's not going to be very comfortable. I mean, for the first 2 years or maybe even 3 years, it's not going to be very comfortable. I mean, who wants to lose a fight with a teenage boy?
Mm.
Like, I mean, no mother wants to lose a fight with a teenage boy because I'm the mother. I know what he's telling is not right.
Mm-hmm.
Or who wants to lose a fight with their husband? Right?
Nobody.
Right? So it's not an easy thing, but then I always recognized that it will have, like, me winning the fight will have to wait for the next 5 years. That's it. I'm going to collectively take all the fights and maybe win the 6th year. I'm just giving an example. It really doesn't happen because, like, after a time, you stop caring about those things and you begin to see how trivial they are to begin with anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But in the beginning, it was the ego really, like, that's why I say it's very important to kind of have a gentle approach to it rather than like a very straightforward, strict approach to it, so that it's for a long time. When you give permission to it before being a long time, that means you're also recognizing that there's going to be a lot of failures because there is a definitive goal, but it's also a long time goal. So that means you kind of give yourself time to give a lot of mistakes. And then the ego kind of understands that ego is basically training your own mind. Like it's a made up stuff. We make it up as we go along. Like, I mean, it's not something which is static and this is the shape and it keeps that shape for a very long time. It changes all the time. Like, I can give it any time and shape I want to, but then it also becomes soft by nature. Like, you don't have to force it. It does as you kind of things evolve. That's how
I like how you are saying it becomes soft and it's evolving. And as you evolve, your ego evolves.
100%.
And I like to think of it as ahankara and aham, right? My yoga studio is called Aham Yoga.
Yeah.
And the intention, ahamkara is, yes, ego, I am. But aham is also I am. I am yoga. Like, yoga is my true nature. Yeah, it's my true nature.
Truthful.
Yeah, to be at peace with myself is my true nature. So I think of it as I am versus ahamkara, like aham versus ahamkara.
Yeah.
And to recognize that true nature. And what is true nature? That true nature is your ananda, your bliss. I mean, not going into the koshas, but that's what it is under all those layers.
100%.
Your anandamaya kosha.
Yes.
So to really put that, you said this earlier, to make it priority. Right? And there are external priorities, there are internal priorities, and finding a balance between the two. And what I hear you say is you changed your mindset. It was
Oh,
not
yeah.
so much about asana and pranayama. All that was maybe
It's
happening in the
nothing to do
background.
with that. Is to
Yeah.
keep I'm very clear about these things. My asana and my pranayama, my meditation practice, like silent meditation, I sit down and I do all that. Those are to keep this body healthy. This is like an operating tool and I want to keep it healthy.
Yes.
And then I do all those things. Sometimes I dance. I'm not a very good dancer, but then I try periodically going to these dance classes so that I can good, but I never commit to them as I have committed to the asana practice. I walk very regularly. I hike very regularly. These are all the expressions of yoga, like expressions of trying to keep my body healthy for me. My real practice of yoga is always what I feel within myself. And that's always the priority. And it also began with asana. Like, I'm not going to say that this is somehow I got downloaded with it or anything, right? Like, because like if you have a mind which kind of, as I said, like a people-pleasing personality, that means you're kind of never true to yourself ever. Right. It just kind of like, people like, that's why like it's so easy for me to relate to other people when they like, it's very easy for me to be very less judgment other people because I was them. And I'm still them. Like, I'm like, I like the Hindi that we, 19-20 ka fark hai. Like, it's like, that's it, right? 18-20%. That's it. It's not more. Like, I'm literally 20, like, 2% above or below what everybody else is. So it's very easy for me to really be compassionate to everybody because I'm just exactly like everybody. Like, there's absolutely nothing special about me. So that priority will come, again, as I say, just to be like, just softening that approach and just being like, just being okay with that. And then asana and the pranayama practices are to just keep the, like, they're just very, 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 very good tools, like an amazingly good tools, like to keep your mind sharp, to keep your body healthy, to be in connection. They're like, I think they're the best tools out there. All the tools in the toolbox, they're the best tools, but they are just tools.
And they are also, while they're amazing and infinite, they're also limited to you on your mat in many ways. It's up to you to take it beyond your mat, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
to create that pockets of reflection and to indulge in that dialogue with your inner self. And so if you look at yoga teachers, there are teachers who are beginning their journey and their goals will be slightly different. Right? Versus somebody.
What do you think their goal will be?
I think their goal will be to teach asana classes and to be successful in that. And I'm doing that in air quotes because it's very subjective, right? And we're also conditioned very visually by success means a full yoga class or teaching at a particular place or having X number of students. Now, I don't believe, or X number of followers, I don't subscribe to that. But if I'm very honest, there was a point in time when I thought that mattered, and I worked towards it, and only to realize that, no, those are external to me. I need that to pay the bills, for example.
That's why they're important.
Yeah.
They're very important.
Correct. But they are not my identity in many ways. But I also have to say, I had very grounded teachers, very grounded upbringing. And a lot of this, I think, comes to us culturally. We just don't label it as yoga. So in some ways, I think that was like a head start, right? And I can go back to like memories of what my grandmother would say. And back then I was like, why is she saying this? Now it makes so much sense. So that cultural blueprint was there, which helped, and just having really grounded teachers, their own personality, right? Some of us.
What we attract towards too.
Correct. So for a new teacher who is trying to, I always believe the more content you are, even in the moments of when nothing is going right.
Working.
Yeah. The more content you are, the more you will navigate peacefully. And not to get bothered by the external yoga world as much, right? So I'm not saying disengage. I'm not saying be disinterested, dispassionate. How does one set expectations for them? So what advice do you have for somebody who's very new? It's always easier if you've been on this journey for a while. Because
Yes.
then you are speaking to an informed audience,
Yes.
right? And
100%.
we have that.
Yeah.
So what would you say to a beginner teacher versus an experienced teacher?
Mm. So I'm going to start with beginner teacher, because we were all beginner students at some point. The memory is usually not that great, but if we do dig into it, we definitely can find the place of beginners back again. Okay, I will just, again, I tend to only speak with my own examples. I'm not very good at giving very general advices. My husband still remembers the day I taught probably my third or fourth class. This was 10, 12 years ago. And I cried on the way back because I had driven 30 minutes and then there was not a single student in the class. So there was an ice cream parlor next door. And my husband said, why don't you treat yourself to an ice cream? And then that's what I did. My kids were so young then. They were at school. And then I had gone to teach this class. I had taken this class because, that was the class available for me to teach at that time as a new teacher. So I had gone there, not a single student in the class. And I, took that ice cream and came back. From that place, right, I ate that ice cream, cried a little bit, and, do I think it was not important? No. I think as a new teacher, I don't think anything is more important than that, in the sense because that's what you know.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot know what you do not know.
Yes.
Right. One of the examples I give is my grandmother, who passed away just last year, she passed away in her 90s, never ate a chocolate in her life. And we could sit here and explain to her how chocolate tastes. She wouldn't know what a chocolate is.
Until she can.
Right. So it's the same thing, for me to say oh, peace of mind is important. I can, but I know what it is not to have any student and how does it feel to be that. One thing I did do was, then I had to kind of put a framework as to then what does success means then?
Yes.
I had to put down. And then I said to myself, I'm going to have 5 students in the class.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I'm very good because I'm a lazy person. If I don't have goals, I can be oh, I'm willy-willy. I'm just going to go and see what happens. If nobody's there, nobody's there. But then the studio also has to pay rent.
Yes.
They also has to pay to me. So then I have a responsibility also to make sure that I am doing my part. I am doing my part as a teacher to show up and do what I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
So then I understood that there were things I had to do, I had to refine my teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had to maybe make social media posts that people came to know who I am as a person, whatever that is, right? Whatever that is. But then I had to define to myself what I thought success meant.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be small. It has to be in my comfort zone. And it has to be something which I can work on for some period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, I gave myself 1 year for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I even told my husband after I came back, I said, I'm going to give it 1 year. I'm going to do everything in my part. I'm going to study. I'm going to get prepared. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing whatever it's supposed to be. Social media was not very big back then, but then
I know, I think that's, we got lucky that way.
Still doing it, still doing a little bit of it, whatever. And then email, ask neighbors, whatever that is you had to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do all that for 1 full year. And I'm going to do it with a lot of dedication. If it doesn't work, then I'll tell myself this is not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll find something else to do.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm going to give it 1 full year. It really did not take 1 full year. It took about 3 months.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Then I made sure that I went prepared to the classes. I taught a good class so that I taught a very approachable class.
Mm-hmm.
And then when people came, I kind of understood what they wanted to learn from me and what I was good at teaching to them.
Mm-hmm. And make it relatable.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah,
and then that, I think, is how I feel as a beginner teacher who's in the setting of the journey. Because you don't know what contentment is. Again, we are using these big words, but they are so lofty and they're so heavy to carry.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to take very small words and very small, if it is a better word, goal.
Mm-hmm.
So it is doable and achievable. I don't know how many people in your audience read or listen to Seth Godin. He's an amazing marketing writer. And I have taken a couple of workshops from him because I love to write. And he always talks about that, minuscule of an attempt to do something small, and he calls it shipping. That means you allow it to test it out in the market.
Mhm.
Like you learn something small and then you teach it. You learn something small, you teach it and see how that goes. Oh, they're not responding to it. Maybe I have to refine it in a different way.
Mm.
And that joy for me was success. Like that joy of like
Beautiful.
that small learnings. Every day I would go, oh, let me see. If I tell them a story, let's see what happens. Right.
Yes.
And
Uh-huh.
then,
Mhm.
and then, and I had to sit down and refine that story, so that it's not overly boring or it's
Yeah.
too philosophical, whatever that is, right? However, whatever is in my idea that, and I did it. And then it slowly became the way I began to teach. And that was a joyous thing for me, like to
Mhm.
be like, just that small thing I'm going to do today. That's it.
Mm.
And then I'm going to keep doing it for a little bit longer. And then when and this is what I say, success is when your students, like as a yoga teacher at least, money is what you're going to make, because none of us, I don't think, again, I don't want to belittle money. It is very, very important. Like
Mhm.
it's super, super important. So like, please do not, like teachers, don't do not think that it's not important. It is very, very important. But you do have to ask yourself, what is the joyous thing for you being a teacher in that is? Like, what is the most thing which brings you the most amount of joy? If it is numbers, go crazy on social media, go whatever that is, do whatever you need to be done and get those people in the room.
Mhm.
If it is joy of learning, then find a place for it. But you do have to define to yourself what that small piece of success means to you.
Mhm. Mhm.
And you have to work on it. And then when you're working on it, it's always the best thing. Like that, I think is I don't know, I think it's Steve Jobs who says like, the destination is the destination, the reward is the process.
Mhm. Mhm. I was just
Um,
thinking the journey, right? The journey,
yeah,
be
yeah. So
immersed in
the
the journey.
reward itself is
Yeah.
the process. And I feel like the reward for me was that, like becoming curious and trying to learn small things so that I can define my successes.
Yeah. No, it's incremental
Does it
because
make sense?
it totally makes sense. And I relate to a lot of it, right from driving 30 minutes. Because I used to, I learned to drive in this country. I didn't drive
Yes.
in Bangalore traffic.
And then park.
And park. Oh my, I would go 2 hours ahead of class. Only because what if I didn't get to park? What if I didn't get to make a turn? All those, like in winter, I'd be like sweating and driving. And I remember the first time I drove was a 45-minute drive for one of my first few teaching assignments. And I left my husband on like speaker.
So that you could.
And just so that I get to I mean, I've really put myself out there because at
Yes.
many levels it mattered to me.
Yes.
But what the listeners on this podcast will have heard me say 100 times is learn a little yoga and learn it really well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that little yoga you
Mm-hmm.
can teach for a lifetime.
Yes.
So whether that's just a set of poses, know them so well, so deeply. If somebody has this issue, this condition, that amount of accessibility, you should be able to cater to it. So learn that little yoga, forget everything else, and immerse in that. And what you're saying is you immersed in that journey of teaching, that incremental, okay, I'm going to try this, a story today, this tidbit tomorrow, and really giving yourself that time. And giving your students that time as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And learning how to communicate. That was a big thing for me, right? Learning how to communicate to this new audience who spoke a little differently than I'm used to.
Yes.
And to be relatable to them and to engage them. And that there are nerves. You can cry after class if you want to. But when you are in class, you do your best, you serve, and you really find when your student succeeds, you succeed. And the more clarity you have, the more confident you will get.
And also we have to kind of also acknowledge that teaching yoga is actually a privilege.
Yeah.
Right. And like that's one of the things I had to come to terms with myself, that this is kind of a privileged job. Like
What
even
do
if
you
it is a job for that matter. In the sense, like we all are very, we are aware like how much teachers get paid in the beginning and all that. And even to say that I'm going to pursue this, that like, I mean, see, this is like, I quoted this like last week, but I still forget about this poet name. And I'm sorry to like, there is like this very modern poet, and somebody sent me some poetry, and I love poetry. So like, that's kind of my thing. And he's, it starts with S. It's an Indian poet, a very modern poet. And he said like, I think like for some, again, totally out of like, I'm paraphrasing everything. So it seems like 3 people are dying, I think, like either hit by an arrow, hit by something. Okay. And the first one says Ram. The second one says Allah. The third one says Anna, food. So like teaching yoga are the for the first 2 category of people. It is not for the people who are looking for food. So then I had to accept to myself that I was full. I'm not doing this to put money, food on the table. I had to accept it because like, this is like, oh my God, like I'm going to bring my son back again in the conversation. He is like in a teen, like, and I was driving this, he was in middle school by then. He's a little bit more capitalistic than I would like him to be, but he is what he is, right? So we were driving from school, like, and picked him up from practice, and we were driving, and I asked him like, hey, like I have a little bit of money saved away. What do you think I should do? Should I start a yoga studio or should I start a cafe? Because I like both of them. And he's a very like thoughtful 14-year-old boy. And he takes a pause and he tells me, both are very bad business decisions. But if you really want to, you're one of those people who like to follow your passions, open a yoga studio. At least you don't have to get up at 3 a.m. and bake breads.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I'm not saying running a yoga studio is less harder, but then, so that's a privilege. That's what I'm saying. Like following, when we use words like I'm going to follow my passion, we are in the second category of, as we're dying, we're going to say Ram or Allah, but the person who is hungry is going to ask for food. So I had to like recognize to myself that, right, that like I am privileged to teach this. So that has to come first for me to even, I lost thought of what I was talking, but that is what I meant. Like, we as yoga teachers have to acknowledge the privilege that this job is doing a privilege. Once you're already understanding that this job is for privilege, then we cannot behave as if we are behaving to survive. We have to behave how you would behave from a place of generosity.
And there's so many undertones of, astheya, ahimsa. Ahimsa we've spoken about a lot, right? Even aparigraha and all of these things. There's tapas in there, swadhyaya. All of that is in the background, even though we're not calling it out.
The only reason, Arundhati, I don't use those words is because we concoct images of what they mean, and then we begin to live up to it. And this is my favorite thing to tell in classes that whenever I use Sanskrit words or like, I do, like I teach, I'm a very, like I learned Sanskrit. So like I'm a student of Sanskrit. So like that's what I do for 3 times a week. So I am very, very, I love the language. I love the sutras. I love the philosophy and text and everything, but I try to use very minimal of them when it comes to explaining life philosophies to people, because I don't want them to, whenever I say these words, my non-Indian students make it make it like a romantic thing. Yes. Oh my God, asteya. What does that mean? And my Indian students will make it a sacred thing that they have to put it up on a pedestal and now you have to worship it. And both of them are not going to change your life. So that's one of the reasons why I like, especially when it comes to like thinking it, when you want clarity for living yoga, you want to kind of make it as personal. Like teaching is very different. Like you have to stick to the context. You have to take, you have to teach, like if you're claiming to teach Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, then you have to teach what Yoga Sutras of Patanjali are. You cannot make your own stuff. You're teaching that text, and so teach that text. But when it comes to your life, and when you're articulating to yourself and communicating to yourself, try to keep it as simple as possible and as truthful as possible. Then we are not living up to an expectations. We are not making it romantic. We are not making it sacred. We are making it very livable.
And something I think that, we have missed the ball on for a very long time is keeping yoga simple.
Yes.
I always say the yogi is meant for it to be super simple. Yes. We complicate it.
Yes.
And we try to add this grandeur and mystery and, romanticize it and simplify and reduce it. But it's meant to be simple. It's common
Yes.
sense,
Yeah.
simple, you can practice it. Uh, and they left it like that for us. So,
Yes.
and that's how you become relatable, right? And I think the
Mm-hmm.
more we can be relatable and
Mm,
real professionally, not
mm,
keeping those boundaries,
mm-hmm.
it is very significant. So,
Yes.
no, I absolutely think there is so much here. I want to be mindful of your time. Uh, any parting thoughts for teachers as we wrap this up?
Any parting thoughts? Like, same thing. Like, I'm just kind of like, I have a tendency to go on a tandem and then, move to all places. Like, that's kind of my conversation style. So I'm going to just kind of revisit everything, just kind of like, making it more easier for people to understand. One is like trying to keep it simple. If it has to be absolutely meaningful to you, like whatever you pick, whether you're picking to work on, like as I said in the beginning, my lazy approach is work one thing, but it has to solve something you're looking for. Like I was trying to solve a problem in my own life, which is not having peace of mind. So like generally working to yoga philosophies, like in a, I don't know, like I hesitate to use these words, but to just kind of say like to sound smart,
Mm-hmm.
right? These things like
No,
are
it's
like
true.
this intellectual, that these intellectual studies become a place of like we take a lot of pride in sounding smart, and then it just becomes a place to just sound smart, use these words to sound smart, right? So I think like if you don't want that, if you want to really like keep one super simple, keep one thing and keep it super simple and work for it for a very long period of time, whether you're a beginner teacher, whether you're an advanced teacher. And there is a saying which says like, if the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Right. So like that's what happens. If you understand Ahimsa, like I can attest to myself, the way I understood Ahimsa is the same way I understood my truth. Is the same way I understand Aparigraha, the same way I understand Ishvara Pranidhana. I'm not even, I think like, that is right now I'm working on love.
Mm.
In the sense, truly understand what love means. But it's the same procedure. I have a lot of time. So that means like if I want to understand what love is, there has to be less judgment. There has to be less criticism. There has to be less, just like I have to be in a place where it's easy for me to give love. So I kind of create situations in my life where it's easy for me to, one of my friends was asking, like, do you answer all the DMs? I do, because I am learning how to be loving. It's nothing to do with the people asking me the question. They can ask any kind of question I want. They can comment anything on my feed. I want to learn how to be loving. So that is my thing now. So I am trying to answer as lovingly as I possibly can, because that is how you learn things. Like it's nothing to do with the random question that person is asking. It has everything to do with me. So that's why I say keep one thing, let everything else fall away a little bit. Keep it simple and keep it soft. Especially the keep it soft. You keep it soft, and it will. Again, it's these are such joyful things in life. These are not the food on table types.
No, I hear you, and I
That's why we have to kind of make permission and make space for that.
I'm going to summarize this as simple and soft. That is your keep the approach simple and soft, and that is what people have to remember, and that a weight gets lifted off.
Yeah,
and it's on day one of teacher training, I always tell people, right, that I will actually ask you to do less and not more. And I will tell you that the dates for meeting are a certain set of dates on the calendar, but your yoga carries on for lifetimes. Not just saying it and leaving it, actually helping them deconstruct that in some capacity. And if you have to give your piece away, it is not worth it. So whether you're teaching, whether you're practicing, if it's taking you away from your true nature, it is not worth it. You have to redo something. So I really like the message of that, what I'm calling soft and simple.
And I think like the underlining thing which connects all this is the sincerity. That's what I was getting to say. Like when when you ask me like, how do you focus for such a long period of time? That is what I'm talking about. Like the sincerity towards that one small thing. I think that I think is Satudirga Kala. That's why it's for me is like, do you have it what it takes to be sincere for such a long period of time? Nairantarya. Right. And, so like until it becomes deeply rooted within you, like that's how I kind of think is like, Satudika Kala is like for a long period of time, Nairantarya, without any interruptions. How should I do it and how long should I do it? Do it until it's deeply rooted within you.
Do it until it's deeply rooted within you. I think that is very important.
So that's what I mean by like take one thing for a long period of time.
No, wonderful, wonderful. This is very solid advice and insight for teachers and students, and hopefully it will help them in their journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Savitha. Thank you so much for being here.
And you're so delightful.
Oh, thank you. I hope you can't hear the banging and clanking.
No, I cannot. Okay. Absolutely none. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I hope you find that helpful and that your yoga becomes soft and simple. The teacher's newsletter is going out this week. If you haven't signed up, just go to the link in my bio or look in the show notes and you will be able to get your hands on this newsletter. That's it from me. I'll see you next week with a brand new conversation. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.